Okay, well today I got this new Stern clear plexi cover for the DMD from Pen Bits, and all it said on their site was that it was for Stern games, but it didn't say which Stern games. Now I was pretty certain it wasn't for Star Trek, which is what I wanted to use it in, but I went ahead and decided to order one just to find out. And because I know that Stern changed the design of the speaker panel, and I knew that there were some differences, but I didn't know what they were. So I went ahead and took a chance, and just holding it up here, it appears that the corner holes in it are lined up, and they'll work as far as the spacing. But if you lay it on here, you'll see that, get it lined up here, I'll just put it like this. You can see it's a little short, so it's not going to be a direct replacement. Can we use it? Well, if we split the difference, we could probably cut a notch out this end right here on all four corners and split the difference and put a washer on the back side, and we could probably still use this. But we may go ahead and cut our own once we take the red one out and find out, because we're not sure if it's a little bit wider and taller. So, well, we know it's wider, but we don't know if it's taller at this point. So we'll go ahead and take this panel down. And we're going to go ahead and take everything loose so that we can take it off the game and move it so that we can work on it a little bit better. And we're going to go ahead and take the DMD panel off the display, and we're also going to take one of the speakers loose so that we can see how the speakers are layered. I'm pretty sure it looks like it has behind the stainless steel panel, it's got a cutout made out of blue plexi that goes behind this emblem and around the outer part. I'm assuming it's square, and just has these cutouts here for the light to illuminate it. And behind that plastic it has like a honeycomb speaker grill, and then of course the speaker is on top of it. But it looks like all these wires are soldered directly onto the speaker, so I can just go ahead and unplug it here, and it has a plug on the other side for the other side, and then disconnect the power and the data cable, and we should be good to go. Okay, we now have the speaker panel off, so what we're going to do first is we're going to take the display off. So we're going to have to take these 6 nuts off here, and if I'm correct, these outer 4, the 2 on the end and the 2 on this end, are actually bolts that go all the way through. The 2 center ones are studs that are spot welded to the stainless steel panel. So we'll go ahead and take these off first and take the panel off, and then we'll take one of the speakers off and find out exactly how the grill and everything is stacked behind that. Alright, we have our 6 nuts off. So first we're going to get this wire harness out of the way. It has these plastic holders to keep the harness in place. And then we have this paper backing to keep from shorting out the display. Okay, now we'll just pull the display up off of here. Alright, and the display is held up off of the red plexi with these little spacers here. So we'll take these spacers off. And I'm thinking that when I go to install the ColorDMD, this will be the same type of setup. We'll have spacers. Now the spacers might have to be a little bit longer because we won't be able to put the ColorDMD panel as close to the plexi as the LCD panel is, because it's a rather larger panel, and it's gonna we're gonna have to put the bottom edge right flush with the bottom of the panel because of the way the back box is made. So that means the panel is going to stick up above here, so it can't go any lower than the back edge, the two edges of the panel here. So it's basically going to have to be sitting on top of the back lip of the panel. Alright, so now let's go ahead and take the red plexi off. And I don't want to scratch it or anything, because I will be putting it back on here because I don't have the ColorDMD yet. So let's compare it to the DMD that I got from PinBits. But before I do that, my suspicions was correct. These center studs here are actually spot welded to the panel itself, but these four end pieces here are just bolts, which will just come right out. Okay, so let's put the original red DMD cover down. One more bolt, I think, slipped under there, but I'll get that in a minute. And here's the one I got from PinBits. Now, if we lay it on here, as you can see, it's just not quite as wide. That's maybe a 1/4 inch or so. I didn't measure it, but and then it's maybe a little bit narrower from top to bottom. It has maybe a 1/16 or maybe 1/8 of an inch on each side. And the outer holes almost line up, but they do seem to be a little bit off, a little bit closer together. So obviously this is made for the earlier Stern games, and like I say, we could probably notch it out and get by with it, because it would cover the hole in the panel, or we can go ahead and cut a new one using this one as a template. But we'll decide that when we get to that stage. Now let's go ahead and bring back over the panel and we'll take a look at the speaker. Okay, for this I turned the panel around, so this is the left speaker on the game if you're facing it from the player's point of view. I chose this one because the other one just has an extra little piece here that holds the capacitor. I guess it's sort of like a crossover or frequency type deal. But anyway, so we're going to go ahead and take this loose. Now the speakers don't have bolts that go all the way through the panel. So these are welded on studs as well. And if we're going to modify these to light up by putting LED strips around the sides and the bottom. They're going to have to be elevated, I would say, a little bit, not much. But we don't have much room to work with here because these studs are very short. So that may be a problem. We may only be able to raise it up maybe 1/16, eighth of an inch, I think, would be stretching it. But it wouldn't take much to add a little bit of light to it, which is what we want to do. But we'll go ahead and start with this. And the wires are soldered directly onto the speaker lugs, so that's why this wiring harness is here in the way. So we'll start by just pulling up the speaker, and we'll just rotate it over here so that we can get the flasher wires out the way. And we don't want to be real careful not to damage that speaker cone. Okay, and as you can see, we have a square piece of metal here, which I'm sure is either laser cut or water jetted. It has a honeycomb pattern, and then it has this center section cut out, and what that does, it lights up this plexi piece that's behind it. Okay, so we'll take that off and lay it down in that direction. Now this light, very light blue plexi, I mean it's extremely light, it's not dark, has the delta shield cut out, the same as the stainless steel front panel, and it even has the little insignia, which I call a little star rocket ship, in the center here cut out, and it appears to be very tight. It's put on there real tight, so I don't want to risk pulling it off because it might crack or break, but I think you can pretty much see what it looks like there. So that's basically it, and it's very thin plexi. I'm not sure what thickness that is. It's not real thick. It appears to be a little bit thinner than the red plexi for the display. So that might be something like a 1/16 of an inch or 3/32, but it's not very thick. And that's what's puzzling, because this flasher here is supposed to light that up, but the only way it can get any light into it is through this edge of the blue plexi. So that the light would have to go in through this edge and I guess travel through this blue plexi like a lens, sort of like they do with these display signs and well, you've seen displays where the plastic lights up around the edges, so the light, I guess, travels through it sort of like a lens and emits the light around all the exposed edges, and I guess that's what's supposed to light the insignia up. So what I'm thinking about doing is, since the flasher is on the top side, that has to remain exposed to the flasher, or you might as well just take the flasher out. It wouldn't be doing any good. And then I got some LED strips coming, and I'm planning on putting a a strip on the sides and the bottom, and leaving the top exposed, and that should light up hopefully this speaker. Now if I can put a little spacer in here and raise the speaker up just a little bit, it may allow a little bit more light to travel in here and reflect on the speaker cone. So that's something that we're just going to have to experiment with, but that won't be until the LED strips get here and until they modify the ColorDMD to work with the Star Trek LE or the Star Trek pinball. It's probably going to be a while before we get back to this, because if you mount the ColorDMD like you're going to have to with the bottom of the panel, even with the bottom here, then the display is going to be off center. In other words, its default center, like it is on the Star Trek Next Generation, would put it, you know, up kind of high. So they're going to have to go in there and change the programming and lower the graphics so it'll be lower to the bottom of the panel to line up with the cutout on the display. So anyway, this speaker seems to be 4-inch by 4-inch square speaker. So that's probably pretty standard. This cutout here is also 4 inches by 4 inches, and the spacing on the studs, well, let's go right straight to the stud here. Spacing on the stud is 3 and 5/16. That's what it looks like. And it is square, so it's the same all the way around. And these studs, as well as the bolts for the display, they're 6/32. So 6/32, I believe, standard threads. Yeah, and they're the same. So that's pretty much it. I guess we'll go ahead and reassemble it again and go over our notes and see if we can't come to some kind of conclusion about what we're going to need to make this work. Okay, one more thing. The 4 corner screws that hold the display in, or they're 6/32 screws, and they're 3/4 of an inch long. And the spacers that go between the plexi and the display are a 1/4 inch long, and that's about it. In order to put the ColorDMD in, we're going to have longer screws, and these are torque head screws. They're not security screws, but they are torque head, and they're stainless steel. So I'm going to have to determine the length of these and the length of the spacers, and try to locate some of those. Okay, to just get a rough idea of what size bolts and spacers we're going to need, I took this DMD panel I got, the plexi, and put it here where the center studs are, which we're going to have to probably cut these center studs down. Now, since we're going to have to put the ColorDMD on the top edge of the top and the bottom of the panel, it's going to basically sit just like this flat on here. So we could leave these studs on here and just take a cutting wheel on a dermal tool and put a nut on there first, and then cut them off at the length we need them, which I would say cut them a 1/4 inch right there where this little spacer is, the original spacer is, and of course take the spacer off and put a flat washer on there. Then you can put a regular 6/32 nut on there, and the 2 center studs will hold the clear plexi in place. Okay, so anyway, we've got this on here, and this is pretty much where the frame of the color DMD is going to have to sit. And the red DMD is going to be the same size. We'll just cut a clear one. So we're going to have about, it looks like a 1/2 inch between the plexi and the bottom of the frame rail, and the LCD panel probably sits back maybe 1/16 of an inch from the edge of the bracket. I'm not real sure about that. I'd have to look at the one I have to confirm that, but we can be safe to say that the bottom of the metal bracket, mounting bracket, the panel will be either flush with that or maybe recessed a little bit above that. So that shouldn't be a problem. So if we take the measurement between the plexiglass and the straight edge we got across the back here, you're looking at exactly a 1/2 inch. So we could probably get by with a 1/2 inch spacer, and that 1/2 inch gap is going to be between the plexi and the LCD panel for the color DMD. We can probably use some 1/2 inch sticky back foam, the very thing that they used in the back of the Star Trek Next Generation, and then we can just stick that on the panel here around the edges, and that way when you set it down, you won't be able to look up around the edges of the screen. So that should work out. Okay, now the original bolts that go in the corner, because the center are welded studs, so we're going to have to get new bolts, because the new bolts are only, well, the old bolts are only 3/4 of an inch. So they basically, when they come through the panel, are about the same height as these studs, or maybe just a tad lower. So we're going to have to put new bolts in the 4 corners, and an inch would bring us up. I'd say 1 1/4 inches would give us plenty of room to spare, because it's just under 3/4 of an inch at the bottom of the panel, and the metal bracket's not very thick. So we could maybe get by with 1 inch, but I'd say at least 1 1/4 inches, and you could even go 1.5 inches if that's all you can find, but I'd say at least 1 1/4 inches to 1.5 inches bolts for the corner to mount the color DMD, and that pretty much should take care of it.